Welcome to 91.9 FM, Port Townsend's eclectic, authentic community radio. And you're listening to Under the Rainbow, Looking Out and Looking Forward, a show about issues for the GLBT community and the larger community of Port Townsend, but even more important, helping the larger community know who we all are and what some of our contributions are to each other as well as the community at large. And today we have two very special guests. And before I even say their names, I want to tell you that when I first met them, it was years before this, 2005, it was years before this radio show was a twinkle in anybody's eyes. The station wasn't even a twinkle. But somehow I knew that I would someday be interviewing these two women because they are tremendous. And I am speaking of Linda Roars and Susan Ambrosius. They are members of this community forever and ever. They've been with each other in a same-sex relationship for 22 plus years. But Linda, and let me tell you a little more about each of them. Linda was born in the wilds of the Black Hills of South Dakota in 1953, grew up 300 miles from where Matthew Shepard, victim of a heinous gay hate crime, was murdered in Laramie, Wyoming, 1998. She was a notorious juvenile delinquent, but also a public high school honor student and a state athlete. She has an associate degree in arts and mechanical drafting and a BS in sociology. She lived a girl-crazy double life since kindergarten, finally tiptoeing out of the cramped closet in a redneck state in 1975. It's a miracle that she's still standing in here. She's exclusively lesbian since age 16, a high school ladies' woman, cheating on girlfriend Joan with gal pal Donna. Very naughty. Those were the days, my friends. But we won't get too much more into that because we want to get more into the things that are happening today. But she had a profound spiritual awakening in 1974 and was set free from destructive tendencies, used her spiritual energies towards not only developing the inner life, but impelled to gay lesbian activism. She was an active member of the Black Hills Gay Coalition, 1975 to 77. She was the first out lesbian to address the Rapid City, South Dakota National Organization of Women in 76, hitchhiked with lover Dot to the 77 Michigan Women's Music Festival. I knew I saw you somewhere a long time ago on her way to Poquag, New York. First large-scale Manhattan gay, lesbian, spiritual community involvement in 1977. Moved to Seattle, Washington in 78. Had a career in primarily home restoration work. Helped to foster lesbian spirituality groups on Capitol Hill. Participated in the Seattle gay pride parades throughout the years, often riding in Dykes on Bikes contingents and walking alongside women mistaken for men in public restrooms group. She attended for the first time in 78 a San Francisco gay lesbian spirituality conference, followed up with the San Francisco Gay Pride Parade in 1978, 90,000 strong, and you wouldn't even believe what it is now. I'm going to finish introducing Linda after I give you a little of Susan. She is a Port Townsend sweetheart, an art patron, a political activist, a master gardener. She has occasionally had bouts of fear of missing out on, we call it FOMO, fear of missing out on all of Port Townsend's astonishing cultural offerings on any given night. But that's said by her partner about her. I'm going to tell you more details as well. She was a peace activist, worked on the American Friends Service Committee to raise consciousness and end the war in Vietnam, worked under Cesar Chavez's Farm Workers Union as a legal researcher and union organizer in Belle Glade, Florida at Minute Maid Orange groves. Oh, you must have met Anita Bryant at that time.
She liked me lots.
I was going down to Delano to listen to Caesar and to help out. In those days, we slept on a church floor. Yeah. In 1972, with 9 friends, she started a food co-op in St. Louis. She foster parented infants in St. Louis and Seattle, 16 altogether, mostly medically fragile newborns. Susan is an environmental activist. She supported and worked for environmental causes, especially pesticide awareness, sustainable farming practices, and whale ocean mammal protection. An avid gardener with skills and composting obsession, learned from her parents. And I have to say, the other thing that happened when we moved here was she was featured, a banana tree that she grew in Port Townsend was featured on the front page of The Leader. She's a linguist, worked in Europe as language translator and document editor, lived abroad for 21 years altogether, mostly in the Netherlands. Most people return from Europe with antiques. She brought back 3,000 pounds of rocks. Rocks, folks. I mean, even though she was in the Netherlands, it was rocks when she moved back to the U.S. She's a GLBT activist and worked with PFLAG and GLBT spirituality groups. So, in our little far-flung conversation today, truly, when I met the two of you, I just saw you as the glue of the GLBT community. You were always doing the important things that needed to be done at that time. And at that time, we had a more active, in the month of June, Pride festivities. You were at the center of those. And then almost immediately, we discovered we all love reading, and Susan told me all about library volunteer activities, and I kept tripping into the two of you. So what sort of moves you to do the wonderful things you do in both communities, the smaller GLBT community and the larger community of Port Townsend? What gets you going?
Well, I think we're really fortunate, Marcia, to have you in our community. You're just a treasure, and I just totally love you. Thank you for this time. I think for Susan and I, we're particularly gifted in that we're semi-retired. We have the time to put into the community. We have those energies. And when we came to Port Townsend, we were really impressed by what an insouciant burg it is. We love the lightheartedness. I had terrible fear when Susan and I fell in love and I lived with her in Europe that if I wooed her back to the United States of America, that she'd find it way too right for her politics. And fortunately, we were brought to Port Townsend, and after Susan had worked and taught in Europe for 20 years, used to really progressive politics, and living in Holland, we were just another boringly normal couple there. It was a non-issue there. I was really concerned about, is she going to feel comfortable in this country? And lesbian friends of ours told us about Port Townsend, what a great place it was. And I lived in Seattle for many years, but had never frequented Port Townsend. And we came up here in the early 90s, and we were drawn to the creativity, the artistry, the beauty of this beautiful area, Quimper Peninsula. Often Susan and I have picked homes or cities or towns based on the bumper stickers. And that's kind of our criterion for picking a place to live to do our life. And that was a big part of picking Port Townsend. There were bumper stickers that said, silt happens. What wisdom is there than greater than kindness? This is it, James Broughton quote. I don't care how you did it in California. That was another winning bumper sticker. So all these energies or this confluence of influences brought us to Port Townsend. And I think the thing that we felt right away was this is a place to, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And we wanted to keep our childlike nature nurtured and fed by beautiful friends like you and others in the community that could help us lift up a life that we could feel good about, our creativity, our spirituality, and our sense of humanity and social justice. And we have felt so nurtured in all these areas.
So, Susan, how do you account for all the wonderful things that you do and are to this community, both communities here?
I think that probably the motivating force for me is that I just love people. And so I get a chance here to mix with all kinds of people. For instance, in the film festival, I get to be the crowd coordinator for which means I'm downtown on the block, on the square, with like 500 to 1,000 people.
You're listening to 91.9 FM, and we're getting back to Susan Ambrosius' description of what stirs her to be the wonderful, giving person in this community that you are, Susan.
I think I love, as I said, I love people, and sometimes I get a chance to be almost more helpful. It's when they say that the Boy Scout helps the old lady across the street and she didn't even want to cross the street. I do that a lot with people. But I can sometimes see a need, someone who's walking with difficulty. I can give them my arm. I get to work at Centrum, for instance, as a volunteer. I worked there for some years, and we always say work. It's hard work and no pay. But it's fun, and I get to be with those kinds of people. Also, Linda and I have been in the lesbian community here wanting to just be regular people. I think we mix in pretty well just because we like people.
And I think, and at the same time, you're wonderful at welcoming new people into this town and letting them know what's possible, whether they're lesbian or straight or black or brown or purple or Jewish. And so that's pretty interesting. And you do have a range of different volunteer activities, and yet to the degree that the lesbian community, the gay lesbian community, is kind of extended family because a lot of folks are not in their own family, I do run into you both as being really central to folks when they have important passages, and we've been parts of some of the same committees and same memorial services, unfortunately. But it's a necessary thing in either community, in the GLBT community or the larger Port Townsend community. You each do, though, a lot of one-to-one kind of mentoring. Tell us a little bit about what drives you or what spirits you to those kinds of human connections.
I know for myself, when I was a young adult, I was very, very troubled, and I had a big turnaround in my life. I had a really profound spiritual experience that really set the pattern for the rest of my life. They say you have to have your adulthood to get over your childhood, and so I'm still working some of those issues out. But for me, I've been blessed with near-death experience, out-of-body experiences, enlightenment experiences that have taught me to wear the world as a loose garment. But in part of that is knowing that spiritual love is the glue of the universe, and that as we give, we also are gifted. And that's been my experience in life, that the Yurok Native American tribe in Northern California, they have one tradition, and that is to be true to yourself. And how you're true to yourself is to give of your best to help another in need. And so maybe out of my own deep yearnings for spirit and spirituality, I found that if in extending love to others, that I feel embraced by the goodness, the Divine Mother, the beauty of the universe.
I would say for me that one of the ways I connect with people, I mean, one-on-one certainly with people that I love and maybe in some way can help, but without giving advice or overbearing or trying to be the one who knows it all, because I don't. I'm learning more and more as I get older. The older I am, the less I know. But I will say that I am very gregarious. Poor Linda. She's a quiet person who loves to be sequestered with a really good book. And for me, I'm out there, and if I'm at QFC in the line waiting for the cashier, I strike up a conversation with the person next to me. And sometimes I even say, well, my wife bought the wrong thing, so I had to bring it back and get the right thing. And, and some of them will just about blink and gasp. But many of them will, I think they look at you as a real person when you sort of come out of the nowhere, sort of.
Actually, though, Susan, both of our relationships are similar. You and I are the gregarious ones, and Linda and Nyla are the quieter ones, but whose still waters run super deep. But I think the most fun about coming out in public is when the spouse is around, because they get they wonder, why are you striking up these conversations? Why are you giving out this private information? When are you going to shut up? And so it's way more fun to do it when they're around than when they're not around.
That's a good point.
So Rather than my reading from the introductions, can you each talk about the range of other activities outside the GLBT community? We touched on a few, but there's so many more. You've done things with the Maritime Center. Let's hear about a little bit about all the various things.
Well, one of the things that I've done, I've been called, to contribute to some of the auctions in town, like the Land Trust auction, the Marine Science Center. One of the things I donate every year to the Marine Science Center is my Wild and Wacky tour, which is taking people around. It's free, the first thing, except that people buy it at the Marine Science Center auction, so they do get some money for it. But I take people around the part of Port Townsend that is just seeped in gossip and history, and so I like to take them around and tell them the inside scoops on a lot of these houses and neighborhoods. So that's one thing I do that's kind of fun.
Let's give a quick listing. The film festival.
Okay, the Centrum, of course, and the Marine Science Center, and we have had a foster child here who we hear about still now and then. I have spent time in going to the schools and speaking on an LGBT panel in front of social studies classes. Linda and I did that together. So that was, I suppose, contemporary in Port Townsend. I love to work to be, I'm a friend of the library, of course.
And what do you do on the Quimper Grange board?
Quimper Grange, we are a community organization. Especially the building itself would have lapsed into decay and probably have been sold or something by National or Washington State Grange. So we kept that building and rehabbed it, and it has a beautiful floor. And people dance on that floor 3 weekends a month. And so it gets used a lot, and it pays its own way with rent. And we make decisions about programs we offer, especially agriculture related. We've had gardening, and we've had composting and chickens and poultry at home, and seed starting, and all kinds of, some of them are fibers, for instance, from the goat and sheep farmers and llama farmers around here. So on that, and I have an interest in that because I was born and raised on a dairy farm, which meant if you grow up on a farm, I always say, that if you are awake, you have to be working. You cannot stand still and do nothing. So on the Grange, I know that, and I contribute to that because I feel it was a part of my childhood.
I have a confession to make that after we met Susan and Linda, they didn't know it because they didn't seem to feel stalked. But when friends of ours came to town, we did drive-bys to show their garden to them, to friends, because it is so unusual. It is so beautiful, so special. We only have a few minutes left, so Linda, what do you want to be sure the listener knows about you that I haven't had an opportunity to ask you about?
I think it'd be best to say my gratitude, for the area and for the people that live here, that we're extended a progressive place to live and grow and develop ourselves and to be part of. I think we're very fortunate to live here, and we're often been told people meet us and find out where we live, and Susan's wild and wacky garden, they say, "Oh, we thought a gay couple lived here." So we figured that's the highest honor. We call people our looky-loos who take pictures of our non-conforming fence, and our fence really was a way to give back to the creativity and artistry of the community, and again add that childlikeness, that lightheartedness that we so appreciate here, because the world can be awfully difficult and awfully hard. And so we're grateful for the buoyancy of spirit that the sea often reminds us of, to live, light and gay.
Okay, Susan, what haven't I had an opportunity to ask or say that you need the listener to know about you?
I would say that on our fence, since Linda was just talking about the fence, we have 3 Chinese characters that our Chinese friends said, you put that on your house for yourself. But we put it on our fence for the whole community. Anybody who walks or drives by there is given the Chinese blessing of double happiness, great good fortune, and all prosperity. And with that, I think mercy and justice for all is a pretty good mantra for me to. And, even we like the idea of harmony, all concord and harmony. And even our email address says that. It's universe.
Well, it's really wonderful that I want the listener to know that they're spouting in the most wonderful way very lofty thoughts, and very few people know how to act on the thoughts that are being espoused by these two women. But I can tell you, the words and music match. They're out in the world bringing these wonderful things with them. Not to us, but with us. They're joiners. They truly are the glue. They're connectors. One thing you didn't mention that really spoke to me is you also bring music to people. You brought Nyla and I to Steve Lewis, the late Steve Lewis, and the old folk songs. And I'm sure there's lots more music in your lives now that we're going to have to get to in a different show. I want to thank you both for being with us. Linda Rohr, Susan Ambrosius, for Under the Rainbow. I want to thank Emily Quackenbush, our engineer and editor, Larry Stein, our program director, Peter Guerrero, my co-producer and the founder of Under the Rainbow, Looking Out and Looking Forward. This is Marcia Perlstein, your friendly neighborhood interviewer. Until next time, please go gently, and if you can't go gently as you can.